Hello, I'm Mark Bassingthwaite, the Risk Manager with ALPS, and welcome to another episode of ALPS InBrief, the podcast that comes to you from the historic Florence Building in beautiful downtown Missoula, Montana. And it is a pleasure to have the opportunity to visit again via podcast. Before I get into the topic of this podcast, I'd like to share a story and some information about what's going on in my life as a way to set up where we're going to go. Let's start with a call that I took earlier this week, and it came from an attorney who really wanted to understand if what he was doing in terms of security with his system was sufficient, if there was other things that he could do. And what prompted the call is he went through an experience somewhat similar to what happened to my wife and I a number of years ago. He was the victim of identity theft. Had a tax return filed, fraudulently filed obviously in his name, and some other things had occurred. One of the mistakes he made, however, was using a complex password. Now, that was not the mistake. That's a great thing. But he used it on multiple accounts. And as a result of the getting his personal information, they were also able to get into his work computer. And some email was being sent out from his computer under his name, trying to scam clients and some businesses he works with out of funds. And so that was a bit of a mess. The other situation that's going on in terms of my own life is, and this is all good, but my wife and I are currently in transition. And we are going through something I think a lot of people are going through in these crazy times, and it has to do with moving. Long story short again, the timing of moving out of one home, which has been sold, and into a new home, which is currently still under construction, did not line up as close as we might have liked. So we are currently in transition, living in a temporary apartment until things settle down and get finished. It's quite a change. Most of our belongings are sitting in storage, and we kid around that at some point when we finally get settled and the truck unloaded and start unpacking, it'll be like Christmas. We'll say, I had no idea we had this stuff, so it's going to be fun. But I began to realize, although I've been telecommuting for many, many years and will continue to do so, this transition into a corporate apartment, and by that I simply just mean it's a small furnished apartment, it sort of struck me as I'm going through an experience similar to what I think a lot of people did when they had to rapidly transition from the office to working from home in the early days of the pandemic. And there were some things here that as I started to set up and figure out what was going on, I realized, wait, there are some security issues that really need to be addressed. So I thought it's worth talking about some of this. It's, the lawyer that called, it was about best practices. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? Is there anything else I could be doing? And we had a good discussion, and it turns out there were a few things he could do to further secure what he was doing. And again, I sit and think, okay, boy, I didn't realize, or just wasn't thinking about how much I take for granted, given my old situation, and then transitioning. So let's talk about what we can do as individuals to make our systems as secure as we can to help protect the confidences, the property, the identities of our clients, and of course our own personal information. So this discussion is not about everything that we can do to secure an office network. It's more focusing on the day-to-day basics, the day-to-day things we should all be thinking about that can help IT at our firm keep us secure as a firm and keep our information and the information of our clients private and confidential. So let's look at this, and I want to start with just the basics. and then we'll kind of explore some other things. But the basics, it is extremely important that we keep the operating system and the applications that we're running on all these devices current in terms of security patches. So now when I talk about devices, I'm talking about the laptops or PCs that we have at home, but even the mobile devices we travel with for vacation or for work trips, the smartphones, tablets, all of these things we need to keep current. Sometimes we may even need to go out and look for patches. I have to do that occasionally on applications on our cell phones. But these patches are being issued for a reason, and they are often bringing additional security features or updates to close vulnerabilities that have been discovered in prior versions. So absolutely essential. Now, one of the things that a lot of people do, and we all spend all kinds of money nowadays on these smartphones, and there's some crazy awesome phones out there, but we treat them as phones, and we're not always thinking about the fact that this is a pretty robust computer. So we need to make sure that every mobile device and every device in our home that we are using for work has a internet security suite running, and it too should be kept current with all patches. One side note here, do not rely on free security programs or free VPNs. There's lots of free stuff out there, even in the security space, and you get what you pay for, which is very little when it comes to security. Now, I'm not suggesting that the security software, these free VPNs, don't do what they say they're going to do. A free VPN will certainly encrypt your data stream so that anybody that tries to intercept this data stream won't see it. But the company that gives you this free product, there's an exchange, and the exchange is they get to monetize and monitor all you're doing, and so you are what they are making money off of. That's not acceptable for a lawyer who is practicing law and in terms of using these devices in the furtherance of practicing law, because that information just no. So you spend the few bucks that it's going to cost and be a bit more secure about it all. Turn on full disk encryption. In this day and age, when it's one setting on a phone or a laptop, turn this stuff on, I consider it unethical. I truly consider it incompetent not to take the time to turn this stuff on. Full disk encryption is typically, once you turn your device off and somebody tries to turn it back on, if it's lost or stolen, if they don't have the password to decrypt, your data is protected and your client confidences are protected. So turn that on. Set up the ability to do remote wipes if a device is ever lost or stolen. I mean, doesn't that seem like a no-brainer? Take the time to do that. It's so simple and easy to do. Use strong passwords, long pins, and never use the same password or pin on different devices or accounts. The story I just shared with the lawyer who called me, that was the mistake. He was using a very complex password, which was great, but he was using that same password on multiple accounts. If they get one, they have now access to everything. That makes no sense. So now, what is a complex password? Well, best practices would say 16 characters. We're rapidly approaching 20. A number of people that I work with and know in the security space really are saying 20. I routinely am using 20 to 24 on a number of accounts if the device or the application will accept that. And when you say complex, so it's in my case, we have 20 characters on some of this stuff, and it's upper lowercase letters, it's symbols, it's numbers, and it's going to be very, very hard to guess. There's no dictionary words here that would be easy for a hacker to try to figure out. So a lot of pushback that I get on this is, well, how can I remember all of this stuff? Good Lord. I have trouble remembering what I had for breakfast yesterday, Mark. Well, I am not kidding you when I say that my wife and I probably manage between 200, 250 complex passwords and different usernames. I never repeat. I never use them on the same account, or multiple accounts, this kind of thing. What have I done differently? I use a password manager. Personally, I use RoboForm. There are a number out there that are quite good. Dashlane would be another example. But these programs store and manage all these complex passwords for us. And if I need to change a password, it will even do that for me and randomly generate a new complex password and memorize it for me. So all my wife and I need to do is remember a very complex, and this is a long one, but a very complex passphrase, and that's the keys to the kingdom. It's not written down anywhere. We remember it. There's no stickies. It's all easy. But we have the ability now to use complex passwords in every aspect of our life, on any account and device that it'll work with. Turn on or utilize two-factor authentication on all accounts. Don't make it easy. And two-factor authentication, we're talking about authenticator apps, or sending a PIN. As you try to log in your bank account, you get the PIN, or not a PIN, but the code, a 6-digit code, typically on a text message. You don't want to make it easy. If somebody happens to figure out what the password is on, heaven forbid, your IOLTA account, and they're trying to steal some money out of them when they're logging in, if they don't have your phone, the text message isn't coming to them. So it's just one extra level of protection. And I'm telling you, now, TFA, you can hack it. Using that doesn't mean you're 100% secure, but you are exponentially more secure than not using TFA. So absolutely use that on every work personal account that you can, in terms of that it's available. Email accounts, financial accounts, in terms of investment, bank accounts, those kinds of things are obvious key places where you would want to do that. Install a VPN, and a VPN, again, that stands for Virtual Private Network, and it is a software program that will encrypt your data stream, so that if you are, I'm going to talk about this a bit more in terms of Wi-Fi momentarily, but it just makes sure that the sessions when we are on the internet, and that the data stream is encrypted. Again, we're trying to make it ever more complex. So those are some basic things to think about. But now I want to shift gears a little bit and explore, as lawyers, we do take vacations and we travel for business, and there's some exposures that come up here as well. You could be staying in an Airbnb, in a hotel, the list goes on. So a couple of quick behavioral comments, things that we can do. Never use a public computer. I'm thinking about the business center at the resort in Cabo, or at the hotel in DC, whatever it might be, or even local libraries. There's all sorts of places where public computers are available. Absolutely not acceptable in terms of practicing law, communicating with clients. These things are very, very difficult to keep secure. Anybody can come in and do all kinds of stuff. So I would just not use them at all. I literally, if I had my own firm and was, in charge of things here, I would have one warning and do it twice. You're fired if anybody were using a public computer for work. It's that high risk. No public Wi-Fi, no open stuff. I'm talking about the airport. I'm talking about the signal at the hotel. I'm talking about Starbucks. Those kinds of things. We absolutely cannot use this if any alternative exists. And there are alternatives. And I won't get into what all the risks are, but it's very, very insecure and very high risk. So what's an alternative? Well, when I travel, a lot of things, or a lot of times what I will do is connect my laptop to my smartphone. I'm using my smartphone then as a hotspot. And so the data stream will be sent through using the carrier signal, AT&T, Verizon, whatever carrier you have, far more secure than the local Wi-Fi hotspot. If, however, and I can appreciate at times there are some circumstances where it may not be an option and you really must use Wi-Fi. There are some interesting ethics opinions out there that talk about this, but it is an acceptable risk with certain conditions. And the two big ones are this. Make sure that you know what the legitimate signal is. If you're at an airport and you turn it on, and it says, oh, here's free JetBlue Wi-Fi. Oh, I love JetBlue. JetBlue has never made Wi-Fi available. Okay? But that signal has been out there. People will just create names that they think people will log into. If you're at a Hilton hotel and you see free Hilton, it's not Hilton. That's not what they call their network. So make sure you know. Ask the barista. Ask the person at the front desk at the hotel. What is the name of the network that you have set up that's the legitimate one for me to use? So now you know which one to connect to. Then the other thing is, and this is not optional, as soon as you log into the network, initiate, use the VPN, encrypt your signal. Is this risk-free? Absolutely nothing is risk-free, but this is going to be a little bit more risky than using the carrier signal, but you're taking reasonable precautions to do what you can in light of the circumstances to be as secure as you can. So those are two key things to think about. Some other things, don't leave devices on and accessible. If you step away and you have a conversation with somebody, if you're outside working around a pool on vacation, trying to just get a little sun, and don't leave your laptop on. It's some table unwatched. Have it automatically time out and log off, or in 10 minutes, whatever it might be. If you want to run down to dinner in your hotel room, again, log out, or better yet, just turn the thing off till you get back up there. But take some steps. Again, it's all about making sure we don't want to make it easy for others to get into our systems. So there's a couple of things to think about in terms of vacations and travel. Next, I'm thinking about the move here, and stepping in, and my big concern, and I'm using this as a parallel or corollary to the work from home struggles and that transition. My immediate concern was the router. I have the instructions here. They say the username is admin. Okay, that's the default. Oh, a lot of them are named admin. The password that they had set up was easy to guess, and just, and you look and say, okay, I don't know what they've done with the settings, and so that's completely unacceptable. I cannot and would not put myself at risk using that signal, let alone ALPS. Now, I may be a little crazy at times, I don't know, but I kept my new router, my personal router. I had that with me. Now, I don't travel with a router all the time, although if I'm going to start traveling and then may stay put for a couple of weeks somewhere, I actually might start doing that. I'm very sincere in saying that. But I'm able to trust the signal and be far more secure. I'm not suggesting now, again, that you take routers with you when you travel, but I am suggesting, hey, in your home, if you've not thought about this and taken steps to secure your router, now is the time. There are all kinds of exposures that can come into play here. And the purpose of this talk is not to really explore all that, but it's just to say you need to do something. So let me go through, I have a short list here of things from an article I wrote about this, but I want to talk about some of the basics. You need to understand that the usernames and passwords, the default ones, are available on the internet. They're often standards, and they need to be changed. So again, think about the complex password. You know, that's have a very complex password for the router, and that's changed the username from admin to something that is a bit more unique to you. Change the network SSID, again, the name of the network. Every router comes with the default name, and that has to be changed to something that's unique to you. But don't make it something that's obvious as to who you are. You know, Mark at 2022 Front Street. The neighbors all know, hey, that signals Mark, and no, you want to make it, I don't know who this is kind of stuff, okay? Set up a guest network in your home with its own network name and a unique password so that guests have access to a network. I trust our kids. They're all good kids. They're all adults. We're empty nesters, but when they come home, none of them are allowed on the home network because it's used for work, and there's a lot of, it's personal information. I don't want to expose my stuff to their, and vice versa. But if they're doing something they shouldn't be doing on the network, so separate. I just strongly encourage you to do that because, when kids come into the home and friends of your kids come into the home and they're gaming and doing all kinds of things, if they're on your network that is, that your work computer and your personal devices and everything's on, you're risking, they bring this new level of exposure that we're not necessarily thinking about. Block that. Set up a separate network. If the firmware version of your router isn't current, update to the most current version available. It's all about security patches. Routers need to be updated as well. If it's an auto update option, check that to make sure. If you can't tell, or it looks like there's been no update even released in the last 12 to 18 months, throw out that router and get a new one. And I'm not kidding around. These routers need to be able to be updated automatically, and the updates, a lot of routers, they stop up. I had an older router and it was 2 years out of date before I finally realized, I'm going, well, that's not good. So get rid of it and get something current. Confirm that the network authentication method, and what we're talking about is in the encryption that is the router's using, is set to WPA2 personal, or even better, WPA3 personal, if that option is available. WPA3 is simply just more secure. If neither option, WPA2 or WPA3, is available on the router, it's old, toss it, get a new one, not kidding. And finally, turn off universal plug and play. That's sort of the functionality that makes it very easy to connect new Internet of Things devices and whatnot around the house. I know that it makes connecting new devices when you introduce them to the home a little less convenient. But leaving it on provides hackers easy access, and that's just not acceptable. If you want to do that in your own life and nothing in your home is connected to the office network, or you're doing nothing for work, okay, have at it, I guess. But when we are using devices, the network for work, that's got to be turned off. It's that access avenue, for lack of a better description, has been used even to insert programs like banking Trojans that try to capture your login credentials to your bank account or to your 401k. Not good. So we need to address that. Set up a defined workspace. I think part of this is a wellness thing for me. Part of it is just establishing boundaries in a home, perhaps with children. But having a defined workspace that you can enter and exit from, and others can be learned to respect, can be a huge difference. No device sharing. Absolutely no device sharing. Confidentiality isn't in play, and there's no pandemic exception. If you are using devices, work computers, personal computers for work, smart, everything, the kids, family, if they are not members of your firm, cannot and should not be on these devices. And the final thing that I want to talk about is just behavior in general. And there's really been a couple of interesting studies of late looking at this in terms of some security studies, looking at behavior. And I find it absolutely fascinating. And part of it has occurred because of this, massive work from home thing, but it's true whether this has been true pre-pandemic, and it's going to stay true post-pandemic. Vacations, and when we use our own devices as opposed to a work-controlled device, a work-issued device, and when we are outside of a formal office setting, whether it's vacation, at home, etc., we actually, in terms it just seems to be inherent to the human race, I guess, but we seem to be inherently less vigilant, less diligent. We just get far more casual. So we are more easily tricked into, or falling prey for a phishing attack. We're clicking on something we shouldn't be clicking on. Not just paying attention, not turning things off, sharing devices. We just get very, very casual. We can't. Stay sharp. Think before you click. Don't get too comfortable with the casualness. Don't get too comfortable with this new normal. I understand that for many of us, as an example, we had to transition very quickly to a work from home setting. And it was about making sure the tech worked so that we keep moving forward as best we could. And little thought was given to the security side of this. And then we get comfortable with it. And we don't even think about it. That's what I'm trying to address, in part with this, in terms of work from home, with this. But I want you to think about it in all aspects. It's not just the pandemic. It's not just working from home. It's when we're traveling, when we're on vacation. We need to stay vigilant, and we need to periodically just take a few minutes and sit down and think, wait, is this a responsible thing to do? Wait, have I taken all the steps that I should have taken earlier on, or I should be taking now? I certainly haven't covered everything that you can do, but these are key things and important things and basic things that I think we should all be thinking about, and it should be on your radar. So that's it. I hope you found something of value out of this short discussion. I encourage you, if you have any concerns or questions, something I might be able to help with, please don't hesitate to reach out. My email address is mbass, M-B-A-S-S, at ALPS Insurance, one word, ALPS insurance.com. So alpsinsurance.com, mbass at alpsinsurance.com. You do not need to be an ALPS insured to visit with me. If there's something I can do, hey, if someone reaches out and I'm able to do something that might prevent just one hack, one breach, that's a great day. So that's it, folks. Hey, have a good one. God bless.